Hi, this is welcome to Landscape of Mothers. I'm Jill Clifton. I wanted to talk a little bit today about infants and how they perceive inputs. I think sometimes when we're parenting infants and we're trying to get them to do something, we as caregivers are trying to convince them to do something, right? So we're talking about it, we're hoping that they understand us. We are sort of assuming that they're processing information the same way we are, and infants and toddlers do not. Infants and toddlers are very somatic. They're very much in the moment, and everything depends on how they feel. So that is when we're trying to get them to do something, we need to remember that their experience is the thing that they're learning through, not the ability to think something out or to be logical, right? So this is coming up with some of my clients in the places of like crying it out or trying to get a kid to sit still somewhere while a parent accomplishes a task or something like that. And so there's this way of like needing to put the kid down somewhere and like have them also be safe and contained, and then needing to be a little bit more separate. So if your infant or if your infant or toddler is crying when you're putting them down, and they seem distressed by distance between you. First of all, remember that it's a phase, that it won't last forever. I know it feels like it. I vividly remember feeling like my kids were stuck to me like lint all the time. And so, it's a hard time and very demanding, and know that it will end. It's also a natural experience for them to have. That is small, infants and toddlers are working on first attachment, right? So they're trying to get cues across to and from their caregivers. They need a relationship to be there so that you'll care for them. And then they start to feel this separation between you, right? So like for them, their experience is that you're one unit. They have a need, you fulfill it, right? So there's no separation there, that you can't separate the need from it being fulfilled. So they have this connected experience. So at some point though, as they're starting to experience you moving away a little more and for a little bit longer periods of time, it can be really distressing. And so what we need to remember is they're somatic beings. So what they're doing is they're feeling the separation, and telling them I'm still here or letting them be able to see you isn't necessarily going to help, because they don't think then like, oh, I can see mom, so she's right here. It's more like I can feel that my caregiver is across is away. And so it doesn't matter if I can see them, because I'm not going to logic that out of like, oh, they must be closer than I think or whatever. So infants and toddlers are very somatic, and they're responding to the experience that they're having in this moment. So the other thing is, if they're in distress, they're in distress. There's no being able to talk them out of it. They're not going to understand. They're not going to see another perspective, because it's not happening in their minds the way that it's so often happening in adult minds. They're having just an experience. So if they're acting like they're in distress, then they are in distress and they need something. The things that we can usually offer there are either reassurance. So sometimes if we're engaged in a project that we cannot, for some reason, like we cannot meet their need, we can use that soft voice. We can use just like the verbal reassurances, less about the words we say and more about our tone. So there's a huge difference between like just a minute and just a minute, sweetie, I'm coming, like we're coming. So when we're using that soothing rhythmic kind of voice, it really probably doesn't matter very much what we say. But if we're trying to say like just a minute, and we're irritated, those are gonna, even though we're saying the same words, they're gonna come across very differently, right? And you can probably feel that even in this video, like, why is she yelling at me? So knowing that they're somatic, that they don't think about it, that they just feel it. The other thing then is when the child is distressed, they need co-regulation is the other thing that we can offer. And that requires, co-regulation requires contact. It requires their body to feel our body so that they can know that we're together, and they can start to, there's all kinds of electrical things going on in the nervous system, and their nervous system looks for ours and is like, oh, how do I get back there? And it will find its way back if it just has some place to aim at, right? So that co-regulation is about being together. We breathe together. We touch. You feel warm, and so there's this sensory experience of not being left. So hopefully that's helpful in the realm of understanding or kind of bringing some perspective to how the children are experiencing life that's different from us. And so if we forget to think about them as infants or toddlers, then sometimes we can get into the way that we would talk to an adult about something like that, and we get into lengthy explanations and frustrations and whatever, and they're just not really understanding any of it the way that we're putting it out into the world. So part of the infant caregiver bond is about being able to meet the infant where they are and then bring them to where you want them to be, right? That is, meet them in their distress, give them the things they need to work themselves back toward calm. Okay. I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions, you can post below. And if you need anything else or like this content, you can look at the Landscape of Mothers book. It's available on Amazon and bookshop.org.